Participating, there is a strange truth about human desire that most people learn the hard way. The more you try to hold on, the more it slips through your fingers. When emotions run high and attachment grows strong, the instinct is to move closer, communicate more, participating and secure the connection. But often this does the opposite. It creates pressure, and pressure suffocates attraction. Detachment doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means caring without clinging. Participating, it's the ability to feel something deeply while still allowing space for it to breathe. When you emotionally detach, you stop trying to control outcomes and start allowing natural dynamics to unfold. And that shift alone changes everything. Participating, desire thrives in freedom. When someone feels that your happiness depends on their behavior, they feel responsible for your emotional state. That responsibility turns into weight, and weight kills desire. Emotional space removes that burden. Participating, it gives the other person room to feel, think, and miss you without feeling trapped. This is why detachment often triggers renewed interest. When you're no longer constantly present, your absence becomes noticeable. Not because you disappeared dramatically, participating because your energy is no longer filling every emotional gap. In that quiet, curiosity returns. They begin to wonder what you're doing, how you're feeling, and whether they still matter to you. And that wondering is the seed of desire. Participating, detachment also restores your internal balance. Instead of monitoring every message, you return to yourself. Your focus shifts back to your own life, goals, and emotional stability. That independence is attractive because it signals wholeness. Participating, you're no longer seeking completion from someone else. You're sharing a life you're already building. The key is that this isn't a strategy. It's a state of being. You're not withdrawing to provoke a reaction. You're withdrawing to realign with your own center. Participating, and paradoxically, that's what often brings people back more interested, more aware, and more committed. When someone feels emotionally safe, unpressured, and free to choose, commitment becomes a desire instead of an obligation. Participating, detachment removes the emotional noise and lets genuine interest rise to the surface. So the real power of detachment is not that it makes someone return, it's that it makes you emotionally complete with or without the return. And from that place, participating in any connection that comes back to so willingly, not out of fear, guilt, or pressure. Because when desire is given space, it doesn't fade, it deepens. Most people believe attraction is built through effort, more talking, more explaining, more probing, participating, more showing how much they care. But in reality, attraction is built through emotional calm. Calm communicates something effort never can: security, confidence, and self-trust. And those qualities are what make someone feel safe enough to commit. Participating, when you try to convince someone to stay, you place yourself in a lower position. You're signaling that the connection is more important to you than your own emotional balance. Even if your intentions are pure, the energy behind that behavior feels unstable. Participating, it creates pressure, not closeness. Emotional calm, on the other hand, removes urgency. You're no longer reacting to every shift in behavior or every moment of silence. You're grounded. You respond instead of chase. You listen instead of demand. Participating in that presence feels strong, not needy. Calmness creates emotional contrast. While others are reactive, anxious, or destined to be chosen, you stand steady. That steadiness becomes rare. It signals that your happiness doesn't hinge on being validated. Participating, you're choosing, not begging, and that dynamic naturally increases your value in the other person's eyes. People are drawn to emotional stability because it feels safe. It feels predictable in the best way. It says, you don't have to manage me, participate. You don't have to fix me. You don't have to carry my emotions. That emotional independence removes a massive burden from the connection. When someone feels unburdened, they relax. When they relax, their defenses drop. When defenses drop, intimacy becomes possible again. Not the forced kind, the genuine kind that grows slowly and naturally. This is why emotional effort often backfires. It makes the other person feel responsible for your emotional state. Just participating, and nobody wants to feel like a caretaker in a romantic dynamic. Calm removes that responsibility and restores polarity. Another powerful effect of emotional calm is that it stops emotional spirals before they begin. You no longer overthink. Participating, you no longer read into every detail. You allow space without assuming meaning. That emotional maturity communicates depth. When you are calm, you don't need constant reassurance. You trust the process. You trust yourself. And that self-trust is magnetic. Participating, it makes others curious. It makes them want to invest because they feel they're engaging with someone whole, not someone searching for completion. Commitment grows in environments free from emotional pressure. Participating emerges when both people feel free to choose instead of forced to respond. Calm creates that freedom. It turns connection into desire, not obligation. So while most people try to win someone back with words, logic, or emotion, participating, the real influence happens in silence, steadiness, and emotional control. Because nothing is more attractive than someone who is at peace with themselves, whether you stay or go. When your presence becomes predictable, participating, it slowly fades into the background of someone's emotional world. Not because it's unimportant, but because the mind adapts quickly to consistency. What once felt exciting becomes expected. What was once appreciated becomes assumed. Participating, this is how value quietly gets taken for granted without anyone meaning for it to happen. Absence interrupts that pattern. It removes the constant stimulus and forces the mind to fill the space on its own. When you're no longer there to provide emotional comfort, participating, attention, or validation awareness awakens. The mind begins to replay moments, conversations, and feelings that were previously drowned out by routine. This is why absence creates clarity. It gives emotional experiences room to resurface without distraction. Participating, without your presence shaping the mood, the other person must face their own emotional reality. And that reality often includes missing what they once assumed would always be available. Silence also reveals attachment more honestly than interaction ever could. Participating, when you're gone, feelings can no longer hide behind habits. There's no conversation to distract from emotional truth, no interaction to maintain comfort, just internal reflection. This reflection is what leads to emotional recalibration. Participating, the mind starts to compare life with you and life without you. And that comparison brings insight. What felt optional suddenly feels significant. What felt replaceable starts to feel rare. Importantly, absence doesn't work through fear or manipulation. Participating, it works through emotional honesty. It allows genuine feelings to surface naturally. There's no pressure, no persuasion, just space for awareness. This is also why forced presence rarely restores attraction. Participating, being constantly available, removes the opportunity for reflection, keeps emotions in a state of noise rather than clarity. The mind can't process what it always has access to. Absence creates emotional contrast, it restores perspective. Participating and perspective is what fuels desire. When someone feels your absence, they don't just miss you, they remember why you mattered in the first place. At the same time, absence protects your dignity. You're no longer trying to be seen or heard. Participating, you're allowing reality to speak for itself. That quiet confidence changes how you're perceived. It shows strength without words. When awareness returns through absence, it's more powerful than any explanation you could give because it's self-generated. Participating in self-generated realizations always carry more weight than anything imposed. So if commitment is going to return, it won't come from persuasion, it will come from awareness. And awareness is born in silence, not in noise. Participating in most connections don't fall apart because of lack of love. They fall apart because of too much emotional effort in one direction. Over-pursuit slowly erodes attraction without either person realizing it. Participating in what begins as genuine interest turns into constant availability, constant reassurance, and constant emotional presence. And while it feels caring, it quietly removes the very tension that keeps desire alive. When you're always there, always responsive, participating, always trying to fix things, the dynamic shifts. You move from being a choice to being a certainty. And certainty in emotional relationships often leads to complacency. The other person no longer feels the need to invest, participating, because your presence is guaranteed regardless of their effort. Over-pursuit also changes how you're perceived. Instead of being seen as someone grounded and self-directed, you're seen as someone orbiting around their emotional world. Even if nothing is said, participating, the energy communicates dependence. And dependence creates imbalance. Attraction is built on polarity. Two people choosing each other freely. But when one person is doing most of the choosing, most of the adjusting, and most of the emotional labor, participating, that polarity collapses, the connection becomes lopsided, one person feels pressure, the other feels anxious. This is why over-pursuit often leads to emotional withdrawal. The more you push, the more the other person pulls back. Not out of cruelty, participating, but out of emotional overload, they begin to feel responsible for your feelings, your reactions, and your sense of stability. And that responsibility feels heavy. Ironically, the more you try to secure the connection, the more unstable it becomes. Participating because attraction cannot survive under emotional pressure. It needs freedom to exist. Pulling back restores balance, not by playing games, but by reclaiming your own center. When you stop over-investing, the emotional environment shifts. The pressure dissolves. Participating, the other person can breathe again. And in that space, curiosity and desire often return. This is where respect is rebuilt. You're no longer negotiating your worth or seeking reassurance. You're simply living your life. Participating, and that quiet self-leadership changes how you're perceived. You become someone with standards, boundaries, and direction. Over-pursuit made you predictable. Pulling back makes you present again. Not constantly, not anxiously, but intentionally. Participating, that intentional presence feels rare. It feels chosen, and being chosen is what creates commitment. The key is that pulling back isn't about disappearing. It's about removing emotional excess. You're not withholding love. You're withholding over-attachment. Participating, you're not creating distance. You're creating balance. When balance returns, attraction has room to breathe again. When attraction breathes, commitment has a chance to grow naturally instead of being forced. Starts participating, because real desire doesn't come from being always there. It comes from being emotionally complete enough to step back and let someone choose you. There is a quiet shift that happens when you stop living reactively and start leading your own life. Participating self-leadership is not about control over others. It's about control over your own direction, emotions, and priorities. And that shift alone makes you feel different to the people around you. Not because you changed for them, participating, but because you finally started choosing yourself. When your life lacks clear purpose, relationships easily become the main source of meaning. You wait for messages, you adjust plans, you compromise your routine, and you place emotional weight on every interaction. Party adds intensity, but not depth. It creates attachment, but not stability. Self-leadership replaces that pattern. You wake up with goals. You invest in your work, your health, your growth. You build a life that moves forward whether anyone is watching or not. Participating, and that momentum creates energy that feels grounded, not needy. People are drawn to those who are going somewhere, not because of status, money, or appearance alone, but because direction signals strength. It shows that you have standards, boundaries, participating, and self-respect. When someone senses that your life doesn't revolve around them, they instinctively respect you more. This is why self-leadership makes you irreplaceable. You're no longer interchangeable with anyone who offers attention. Participating, your presence becomes selected, your time becomes valuable. You don't chase connection, you allow it to complement a life already in motion. Self-leadership also removes emotional dependency. You stop needing someone to complete you or validate your worth. Participating, your confidence becomes internal. That internal confidence feels stable and calm. And calm is magnetic. When someone reconnects with you after you've developed self-leadership, they don't just feel attraction, they feel safety. Participating, they sense that you're emotionally grounded, not fragile. That grounding invites deeper commitment because it removes emotional risk. Even if they don't return, self-leadership still wins because you haven't paused your growth for someone else's uncertainty. Participating, you've built something real instead of waiting for potential. And when someone does come back, they're not returning to the old version of you. They're meeting someone who leads their own life, someone who chooses connection, not needs it. Participating, that's what makes commitment real, not effort, not persuasion, but alignment with someone who knows exactly where they're going. The final shift happens when you no longer need the outcome, when you stop waiting, hoping, participating, or emotionally tracking whether someone will return. Something powerful changes inside you. The energy of need disappears, and when need disappears, attraction often reappears in its place. Needing someone's return creates invisible pressure. Participating, even if you say nothing, even if you act calm, the emotional expectation is still felt. It shapes your tone, your reactions, your availability, keeps you slightly anxious, slightly invested, slightly off balance. And that imbalance is what keeps commitment away. Participating, the moment you let go of that need, your emotional state stabilizes. You're no longer performing patience. You're actually at peace. You stop checking for signs. You stop interpreting silence. You stop building your mood around someone else's decisions. Participating, and that inner shift is felt energetically before it's ever noticed logically. This is when people often reappear, not because you try to attract them, but because the emotional environment finally feels safe again. There's no pressure to reassure you. Participating, no fear of disappointing you, no sense of being responsible for your happiness, just space to choose freely. When someone senses that you're okay with or without them, they relax, and when they relax, they can feel their own emotions clearly. Participating, desire only exists in freedom. Commitment only exists in choice. The moment you stop needing their return, you give them the emotional freedom to want it. But the deeper truth is this: even if they don't come back, you're no longer waiting. Participating, you've reclaimed your time, your focus, your emotional authority. You're building a life instead of monitoring a connection. That alone puts you in a position of power. Needing outcomes keeps you stuck in potential. Letting go of outcomes moves you into reality. Participating and reality is always more attractive than fantasy. When someone does return from this place, it's different. You're not desperate. You're not overinvested. You're choosing again from a grounded position. You're no longer trying to secure them. Participating, you're evaluating whether they align with the person you've become. That's why this final shift matters most, not because it guarantees commitment from someone else, but because it guarantees alignment within yourself. Emotional security, and start embodying it. And when emotional security becomes who you are, not what you seek, commitment either returns naturally or becomes unnecessary altogether.